Preparatory work. Installation should have an independent operating space and isolation room, avoiding wet, dusty, corrosive gases in the environment. Repair can be all-weather work. The work site should take dust, rain measures, isolation room, in order to isolate the impact of adverse environmental conditions on the product installation and production process. Environmental conditions: A. All weather. B. Optimal environment. Air relative humidity less than 70%. No obvious dust or corrosive gases on site. Site safety and production work. The site should have fire extinguishing measures, fusion header installation, fabrication drawings, and fabrication procedure record sheets are correctly complete. Forms: check whether the tools and materials required for the fusion installation are complete. Stripping. Stripping follow with the dimensions of the installation instructions. Strip off the outer sheath. Long end 1000 millimeters. Short end 800 millimeters. Leave 30 millimeters the rest of the steel armor at each end. Leave 80 millimeters the rest of the inner sheath at each end. Remove the filler spare, 3-phase separation. Measure 180 millimeters plus 1 second length of connecting tube. Mark with the PVC tape and strip the Cooper shield. Peel off the semi-conductive layer according to the length of the installation instructions. Be careful not to damage the insulation when stripping the semi-conductive layer. The end of the semi-conductive layer is chamfered with a tool to make a smooth transition between the semi-conductive layer and the insulating layer. Add 3 millimeters to 1 second the length of the connecting tube and cut off the insulation. Use a taper cutter to chamfer the insulation. Retain the inner semiconductor layer of 10 millimeters. Sand the surface of the insulation and clean the insulation. The short end of the stripping covered with copper mesh, and the long end of the stripping covered with a cold shrink tube. Insulation of welding modes. Select the corresponding welding mode according to the cable type. Align the conductors at both ends. Add appropriate amount of welding powder and weld the conductors. After welding, cool down the welding parts with a cold air gun quickly. Remove the mold and remove welding slag and polish the welding parts. After the conductor cools down, pay attention to the original conductor during the polishing process. After the body is polished, the insulation layers at both ends are polished to make a taper of 30 mm, and the conductor shield is leaked out by 10 mm to prepare for the recovery of conductor shield. Clean the cable surface. Recovery conductor shielding. Wrap the semi-conductive fabric and tape on the surface of the welded conductor in a half-lap fashion. Recovery insulation layer. Restore the insulation section between the pencil ends with insulating materials 3 to 4 mm above the original cable insulation surface. Cover the shrink tube so that the shrink tube shrinks to the surface of the insulation layer. Wrap tin foil around the surface of the cold shrink tube. Install and connect the temperature control device. Install the heating belt. Ensure that the equipment and instruments are connected correctly. Set the heating temperature and heating time, and start the heating device until the insulation layer is restored. Remove the heating tape and cold shrink tubing in turn and check the state of restoration of the insulation surface. Sand the surface of the insulation with 320 sandpaper until the surface is smooth throughout. Recovery insulation shielding. Apply the semiconductive paint evenly from the semiconductive port at one end of the cable ends, and then to the other end of the connector. Wrap the semiconductive tape in half-lap fashion in sequential order. Pull out the copper mesh, lap over the copper shield at each end of the cable, and secure with constant force springs. Waterproof sealing treatment. The three phases are arranged together. The filling is restored, fixed with PVC tape, and wrapped as a whole in a half-lap manner with white PVC tape. Sand the outer sheath, steel armor, and inner sheath with coarse sandpaper and clean. Wrap the waterproof tape around the inner sheath of the cable, and wrap the waterproof tape in a half-lap from one end of the inner sheath to the other end of the inner sheath. Connect the steel armor at both ends of the cable with a grounding wire and secure it with a constant force spring, and wrap PVC tape around the constant force spring. Wrap the ground wire with PVC tape to keep it tight against the inner waterproof tape. Wrap the waterproof tape from one end of the outer sheath to the other end of the outer sheath with a half lap, and the two ends of the outer sheath were lapped 60 millimeters. The winding should be in the opposite direction to the inner layer of waterproof tape. Install the armor belt. Wrap the armor tape in a half-lap way, 50 to 100 millimeters over the waterproof tape. Secure the end armor tape with PVC tape. Allow the armor tape to cure before moving the cable. Installation finish. Clean up the site. Thanks for watching.